And hello and welcome to AleksTabletops MTG Sets Studies session 135. My name is Alex. I'm not going to be able to show you body because for now we're streaming without web camera. For now, again, I'm still trying to get well. Uh, for about probably almost a month already. It takes a lot of time because I truly don't know what's wrong with me. Still going through kind of like doctors and general practitioners and trying to like understand what the heck is happening. So yeah. So basically, besides that, this is basically one of the reasons why I decided to focus less on streaming now. I basically cut out short streams on Twitch, so I'm not streaming that much on Twitch creative because again, like usually it takes me a lot of energy to dive into the stream and talk about stuff and like provide a kind of a decent educational content, but at the same time like showcase some type of a practical approach to it, not sitting into theory that much. So, but again, the same kind of happens with streams right here. So we continue to study vintage sets. For now we're studying Antiquities. It's going to be a kind of a slow progression. Again, as a reminder, usually our schedule is like goes this way. So regardless, like usually we're streaming 2 days a week on Tuesdays and on Fridays. Usually on Tuesdays we have English MTG Arena streams when we play studying Magic the Gathering Arena. Just playing Magic and like experimenting with decks, and we started a new casual mode where we're basically focusing on building 80 card decks and trying to make sure that there's going to be a good balance within those decks. On Fridays we're doing basically usually the same but with Magic Arena in Russian. So basically it's a Russian session, and then we're basically switching to a basically 2 weeks of MTG play study and 1 week of just regular MTG set studies that we're doing right now. And usually there's going to be always like 4 episodes of MTG Arena study balanced out with 2 episodes, usually in 1 week, Tuesdays and Fridays, of MTG set studies. And although lately the schedule is pretty weird, I'm not streaming like fully. I will try to stream at least once a week, and that means that this overall schedule is going to be much longer. So that means that we're probably not going to be able to go into the full circle. Like again, the full circle is 2 weeks of MTG Arena play, like 4 episodes, 2 in English, 2 in Russian. And since these sessions that we're going to do today, MTG set study sessions, are completely tied in numbers to English sessions, 135, 136, and etc. Until we're going to get through 100 and like at least like 2 sessions in English. Only then we're going to create 2 sessions in English MTG set studies, and only then we will get back to English sessions of MTG play study of Magic Arena again. So again, the schedule is kind of going to be hectic right now. Again, I'm not like leaving this. I will still will continue to stream, but again, the streams are not going to be like completely full on schedule 2 times a week. At least once a week I will try to stream. Maybe there's going to be certain situations where I'm not going to be able to stream during certain week, but again, so for now, it's kind of everything is hectic, like the problems with health, a lot of things that I need to work on besides that are still for now a secret. So again, there's a lot of work that I need to do right now besides trying to get get basically my health back, because of this I decided to not focus on the gaming content that much, so I will try to actually focus more and work more around my creative content, which is usually the main goal and main kind of purpose of everything that I'm doing. So, and gaming content is for me is just like a, I don't know, like a relief, I don't know, something that basically helps me not to focus on only one big thing, but actually kind of create some type of a unique balance into life. Because again, doing one thing all over and over again kind of makes you go crazy at some point, and you have to some sort of a stress relief in your life sometimes, and playing games and studying something like besides the usual stuff that you're doing is a good way to get this balance in your life. So saying all over and over again kind of makes. I'm trying sound, so sound works good. So yeah, let's just dive into this again. I'm not like usually we have about 1 hour, so let's just go into Antiquities. So again, we continue with Antiquities. There's not that many cards in this set. I actually thought that we're going to be able to finish this set in a couple of sessions, but apparently we're not. So it takes us like this is probably fourth session since we started to work on Antiquities, and we're still kind of going through these 100 cards. So let's just figure out what the last card was that we worked on and continue. So the last card was Ivory Tower. It doesn't mean that this card, I actually played it, vividly remember it was last week, that I put this card right here not because this card was kind of unique, but because I just decided, okay, this is the card that we need to stop. It was time. I was quite tired, and we had to stop basically to maintain my normal schedule. So let's just dive into it. So Ivory Tower. This is an artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life, where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. This is actually quite an interesting card. We need to think about, like, should we add a general description of this ability, or should we add the actual description and then a little bit later try to use it as an inspiration for something bigger, which is the whole purpose of MTG set studies usually. I'm studying MTG sets from old days. Basically, my main goal throughout this series is to study all sets available and study all new sets that will basically Magic will release. So this series is going to be kind of an ongoing series. It's probably never going to end. It might will like end or hit certain kind of I don't know, hit a mark when I'm not going to need to do. I don't know, my English today is weird. When I'm not gonna need to do this anymore. Once I will dive into, instead of studying stuff on creative stuff. So once we will start to create, or at least once I will start to create my own stuff, then I will probably going to spend less time on studying this thing. But maybe it's going to go forever. I mean, until I will finish studying sets, and basically, yeah. Who knows? Again, like sometimes you have certain plans for your life, but life is basically gives you quite a lot of surprises that you have to deal with, and then you have to adapt and change stuff. So I'm not promising anything, although I'm like, if I'm promising something, I promise to myself that I will maintain this series as long as possible until we're going to finish all sets, and we will get to the current sets, and then we will basically study only sets after they will be available. Once they will be released, it's going to be much more relevant, it's going to be much more interesting, I guess, for those at least who interested only in the current sets, not interested in the old sets that's kind of outside of the formats, such as standard and etc., even modern. So you probably will be able to play this only in vintage sets and other kind of super extended sets or formats. Either way, so we need to think what to do with this card. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life. So this is basically, like, again, we covered almost every type of ability that works with the turn structure. I believe at some point we might basically find something new and unique, and we will add this one as a separate one. But every time that I'm seeing something like at the beginning of your upkeep, that means that this is just at the start of your turn. So this is something that triggers automatically at certain period of your turn, and at certain stage of your turn. So because of this, we're not going to cover that, so we will dismiss that. So you will gain X life. This is again a separate kind of some sort of ability. Let's just consider it an ability that allows you to gain X amount of life, where X, which is basically a measure of this X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. So the only thing that we're interested in is the measure of X. So the way that X is measured right here is actually quite interesting, because the X is equal to the number of cards in your hand, which is not something unique. But what is unique is the way that we adding this minus thing. In your hand, minus 4. So let's just find X abilities in our MTG Study mechanics. And once we will find these X abilities, so target creature gets +X, etc. So it actually doesn't matter what type of X we're going to think about, because it all kind of works around everything, every type of X. So you gain X life and etc. So ability that has X in them, it's pretty common ability. It has to be here. So target creature with power X or less, deal X damage, gain X life. It doesn't matter. Like, but what we need to do though is we need to choose an X amount of something that is that is the most common thing. So I don't believe that X life is something that is common. The most common thing is to deal X damage, where X is equal to something. So I believe because of this, we're going to create a specification for the X in dealing the damage, because this is something that I believe is going to work. So target creature, if that creature would die this turn, exile that instead. So let's just add this specification right here. We have 2 X damage things, so right here, to each creature without flying, to each player. So we basically have a restriction. What we also could do is set X as amount of, where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. So we're going to set this example right here, but the only thing that I will add is that it has to be a fixed number minus no. Like, for instance, you will get life or deal damage. Snap. Sorry about that. By the way, this is not relevant to my sickness. I mean, like, I don't have a flu, so this is just a sneeze, I guess, because of a lot of dust. I don't know. Whatever. So where X is the number of cards in your hand minus 4. So the whole idea of this, like, I'm trying to generalize it, is we always have to have a certain X, which is going to be equal to the number of something. It could be a number of cards in your hand or anything else, minus something fixed. So basically this 4 is going to be fixed. So 4 is going to be usually fixed. We could set this number to whatever we want. It could be 3, it could be 1, etc. And the number of cards could be anything. Anything measurable. Measurable. Seriously? I don't know how this word actually is written down. Let's just check this out quickly. Seriously? Measurable. Yep. So it has to be something measurable that you could set a number to or for. could be anything measurable. So again, it could be the number of creatures, it could be the number of cards that you discarded this turn, etc. So it actually could be like the wide range of things and variety of things. So it's actually quite cool. So yeah, this is the only thing that I believe we are interested in this ability. So let's just move forward. So again, X, which is going to be measured by something in game, like the current state of something in the game, the number of cards in your hand, the number of cards in your library, etc. And with something that basically fixes the minus for this amount in order to balance this thing out. Because if you have a deck that basically has no limits to cards that you can have in your hand, that means that without having this minus, you could basically gain a lot of lives, basically almost unlimited amount of lives as long as you have a lot of cards in your hand. So -4 basically restricts this, and within the rules of having only maximum of 7 cards in your hand, you're not going to be able to gain more than 3 lives by having the most amount of cards in your hand. So it's quite an interesting thing actually. So this balance is quite important. So because of this, I decided that we need to set this one. So continue. I'm not going to write the names of the cards, so let's just skip that one. So 2, pay 2, tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. We already covered it. Continue. So as long as this creature is untapped, all damage that will be dealt to you by artifacts is dealt to this creature instead. Okay, this is interesting. This is actually something that it's quite similar, but I don't believe that I had this one here. So let's just set this one. So as long as this creature is untapped, all damage that would be dealt to you by artifacts is dealt to this creature instead. By the way, I said that usually if I'm talking about this creature, like the creature that we're talking about, that we're writing ability about, usually is going to be in quotes. Just set this one too, to basically create some type of a clear understanding. So as long as this creature is untapped, all damage that would be dealt to you by artifacts could be anything. So we're going to add this one as a specification. By artifacts will be any type of permanent or spell that could deal damage. Damage permanent. So basically could be any type of permanent or spell that could deal damage to you, of course. To you. This ability is quite I mean, it's quite specific. Ideally I would probably make it much more general. Not going to do this time, but because again, everything that I need about this ability is already here, and at any time I could make this ability generalized and actually kind of break it down into multiple types of abilities based on only this description. So again, as long as this creature tapped, as long as this creature attacking, as long as, again, there's so many like small things that could be changed, as long as this artifact, as long as this permanent is untapped. So there's so many small kind of things that we could change right here, that it's basically, well, like, we could replace one word and it's going to completely change the whole thing. So the idea behind this ability is, in most cases, as long as certain permanent behaves a certain way, or set is in a certain state, all other permanents, like, so basically everything, like if something or certain type of permanent has to perform a certain action, instead of performing this action on this permanent or on you, this action is going to be transferred into this permanent that is in this certain state. So again, because of its complexity, it's quite hard to I don't know, explain it quite clear. I'm probably going to keep it as like this way, because again, I understand what it does. I understand that we could change multiple things right here, and because of this, I don't want to overcomplicate it by trying to generalize it too much, because again, the generalization is so diverse that I'm just going to make it super confusing by trying to make it general. So because of this, let's just say the only thing that I will add is a specification that basically, what the heck? So basically, this permanent, in this particular instance, creature, so this permanent, this creature, is I don't know the English word for it truly. When you're trying to steal a certain action or like attract, redirects any type of action against you to itself. I guess this is the best description of this ability in general. Redirects any type of action against you to itself instead. That's it. So I guess this general description basically describes the whole ability the best way, I guess. Let's just continue. Again, we don't have that much time. This is going to be quite a slow process. I mean, like, I'm not planning to create, like, my own tabletop games any soon. Like, I might not even get to this point at all, but as long as I'm studying this thing, I'm learning this thing, I will know that there is a way to apply this knowledge if I will decide to create my own stuff. So again, it is a plan, hopefully, in the future, but it's not like a main plan that I want to realize. So if I'm not going to be able to do this, like create my own tabletop games, it doesn't matter, I still will possess this knowledge and I will apply this knowledge in some way. Because of this, it definitely will make me a little bit more smarter, hopefully, which is the whole point of why I'm basically like studying Magic, like in general. Once I started this game for myself, I started to feel smarter each time that I'm trying to analyze each mechanic. So again, there is a kind of a saying that stupid people are not playing Magic, because Magic kind of forces you to think. And think a lot, especially considering like all sets and considering how many things Magic has and how many things should be connected together. So because of this, it basically makes you feel better. So even if I'm not going to get to the point of creating my own stuff, I still going to get my, I don't know, moral boost from studying Magic and playing Magic and basically feeling a little bit smarter each day that I'm getting new information. It's a good way for me to study English. It's a good way for me to try to form sentences, and actually I'm learning a lot of English. Like most of my English that I learned was probably from Magic. Not most of it, but big deal of it. And if it wasn't for Magic, I don't believe that I would be able to speak language in the level that I'm speaking right now. Although this is a pretty, again, not impressive level at all. I wish that I had more, like I don't know, high level in speaking English. But again, I'm doing the best that I can. I don't have any kind of special training, mostly self-taught. I went through a course once, but it was just like to acknowledge already existing knowledge and put all this knowledge together in a proper way, I guess. So I wouldn't say that I learned a lot of new stuff. In most cases, I just put together all things that I already knew. So because of this, I didn't have any special training. Although, like, officially, I have like my language is on intermediate level. I like officially with certificate, but I don't believe that this intermediate level is actually kind of set in a proper way. I don't know. English speaking audience that heard me like speak, they actually kind of expressed that my English is more than well. But again, sometimes I understand that I'm not, I don't know. Sometimes it's pretty hard to get my point across. Sometimes when I get to a flow state of mind, I don't know, when my mind is basically flowing fluidly, I don't know, is it like then language skills are kind of easy, come easy to, but then at some point, like for instance, sometimes, like for instance right now, I don't feel it. I don't feel this flow of thoughts in my brain, and it's definitely kind of hard. Although usually, like, I'm trying to think in English, and sometimes I'm thinking in Russian, and there is this saying that native speakers. I don't know why I'm talking about this. It's quite like completely unrelated to what I'm doing right here, but either way, since we don't have any audience, I will talk about it. So there is a saying that a native speakers, it's pretty hard. It's pretty easy to tell a native speaker from a foreign speaker, foreigner. So basically, native speaker is going to think in his native language, and that means that phrases and enunciations and pauses between words and between sentences are going to be much more clear, and there's not going to be that many pauses. They're going to be properly placed. There's not going to be any weird I don't know, weird things happen in their and when they're going to develop see when they will try to get their point across. There's not going to be any like irregularities in that, but a foreign speaker that doesn't have this language as a first language, basically second or third, is going to think in Russian first, or in his language first, and only then try to translate it in English. And for me, sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes I'm actually thinking right away in English, so my thought processes goes through English, and maybe because of this, sometimes it feels like I'm talking like a native speaker sometimes, but sometimes it's pretty clear that I'm foreigner. So again, it's weird. It's just a weird situation when I'm usually finding myself in, because there's a lot of times that when I'm like thinking about something that I want to say, I have a pretty well-formed sentence in my brain already. But when I'm trying to find what I'm talking about, like I'm trying to understand, okay, I don't have a proper word for it, so I don't remember the word, or I don't know the proper word, like, and then I'm trying to implement an English thing into it, and because of this, it basically gets too confused in my brain. So it's kind of like it definitely creates a confusion. It's like your first brain flow goes through English thinking, and then when you don't know something in English, you rely on your native language. And when your native language is not English, your thought process starts to get slow, and it's like your brain basically slows down, getting confused, and your overall flow of talk or speaking basically gets broken, and now you have to find it back. It's something that usually happens, or at least this is the way that I can describe why sometimes when I'm speaking or when I'm talking, it's clear and it's almost indistinguishable sometimes from a native speaker. Although I have a certain accent, definitely I have an accent. I don't know, my accent is actually quite weird. You're probably not going to be able to tell what my accent is. It's definitely not Russian. Because there's a lot of words that I'm pronouncing the way that they're supposed to be pronounced, with a weird accent. But this accent, it's quite weird to tell. It's kind of a mixed accent. I don't know. Depending on what I'm talking about, it could be a weird accent. I don't know. So either way, but I definitely aware that I have a certain accent, so it's not a clear English. Although, like, especially if I'm getting lazy, like for instance, if I don't want to talk that much, if I want to quickly spill my thoughts, I'm not trying to pronounce proper each word, and because of this, sometimes it gets quite like you're going to hear a certain accent, maybe even Russian accent sometimes. Either way, but it's not going to be the same. So it's not going to be the same as usual Russian accent that portrayed in movies. Like, hello, my name is Boris. Hello, my name is Boris. This is completely the worst thing ever. I mean, I hate this type of accent. Like, come on, pronounce things properly. Although I understand why people are not able to do this. It basically works with when exactly they started to learning language. The later in life you start to learn a certain language, the harder it's for you to get this pronunciation, said it properly. Either way, continue. I don't know why I talked about language, because again, maybe because I kind of got to explanation that even though I might not create my own stuff, I still by doing this, I'm still learning English. I'm still getting better, and this is a good thing regardless, because again, it's sometimes, and actually more often than sometimes, it's almost every time, it's not all about the destination that you potentially could get to, but it's all about the journey. And although one of my destinations is to start to create my own tabletop games, it's not it's not primary destination, and because of this, I considering the possibility that I'm not going to be able to reach there, and if I have this possibility that I'm not going to reach this point of creating my own tabletop games, I still have to make my journey the most important thing, because I might not get to the destination. So again, and this is why I'm a truth seeker when it comes down to on this channel. I mean, in Magic and almost everything that I'm doing, I'm trying to find a bigger reason behind this. I don't want to just play games and waste time. I don't want to study things and waste time. I want to make sure that it's going to make my journey towards a potential goal as much fun and as much satisfying and rewarding as possible. And if I'm going to get from studying Magic right here, learning language, becoming better at this language, studying language, learning how to speak and how to portray, or I don't know, express my feelings, express my thoughts through this is the best thing ever. I mean, it's even better than learning something new from mechanic that I'm probably going to forget after I finish the session. But what I will not forget from the session is the value that I get from the session by studying it, by talking about this thing, and by basically psychoanalyzing myself. Weird. Still, let's just continue. Again, we don't have that much time. We have about 20 minutes, so let's just rush into it, because again, we have limited amount of sessions per month, per couple of months, so because of this, it's better to actually spend this time in a proper way. So as long as this one is untapped, we covered it. Attacking creature gets +1/+0, covered it. It's basically just a regular kind of permanent buff, I would say. So usually buff, this is something that it's not permanent, but this is kind of a permanent thing. I don't know how you could call I don't believe that you can call a buff thing a buff if it's not permanent, because buff is something that you basically set on a creature and it basically gets buffed until a certain period of time. But maybe buff is just a making creature bigger, and it doesn't matter if this buff is permanent or temporary, it's still a buff. So I'm not sure about the terminologies. Either way, so because of this one, we covered this a lot of time ago. So again, pay 2, tap 2, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. I believe we covered puts the top. So let's just try to search this one here, not the spell check. Find and replace, find, seriously, put any certain number of target cards from target player's zone, battlefield, graveyard, hand on top of their library in any order. Okay, we have this, interesting. But what we don't have though is from target player's zone, battlefield, graveyard, hand on top of their library. That's interesting, it's interesting. So let's just try to find it, because we might not have this information here. But this is quite one of the most common abilities in Magic is to put cards from the top of the player's library into their graveyard. And if I don't have this one right here, that means that we need to add it. So when a specific run, each player puts her deck into his or her hand, puts into the battlefield taps. No. And discard your card. At the beginning of put edge counter, put target non-land permanent into its Hornless library second from the top. So here it is. So yep, we actually have it. Put the top X cards of your library into your graveyard. So let's just add additional information right here. Put the X cards of your opponent or target player library into your opponent or target player's graveyard. So that's it. The measure of X, let's just think, puts the top 2. So usually there is a set number right here. Put the top X cards of target player's library into their graveyard. So I believe this ability actually covers a lot of like variety of working with libraries. So basically, you put in the top cards of your opponent's or any type of target player library into their graveyard. You can actually do a weird thing and put this card from opponent's library into your graveyard, which is weird. But you can create a mechanic based on that. This is kind of a weird thing, but still, it's kind of the way to steal cards. And then if you have a possibility to return cards from your graveyard, that way you could basically steal a opponent's card that way, which is pretty interesting. So because of this, like, this separation is quite interesting. So yeah, that's it. So that's it. So okay, this is a land. You can tap it, get a waste for it. Then it becomes, for 1, it becomes a 2/2 assembly worker artifact creature until end of the turn. It's still a land. This is interesting. I don't believe that we actually covered when creatures are when creature becomes something. So let's just try to find becomes. Enchanted card loses all ability or becomes weaker. Target land becomes a XX creature that's still land. No, we actually covered it. Cool. So target land becomes a XX creature that's still a land. It could be done for a certain price, it could be done anyway, but again, you see, like, if you understand the core word around this mechanic, that it's much easier to find it right here. Although we have a lot of kind of explanations and descriptions, but certain words are the keywords in a certain mechanic that will help you to find it. So I guess it comes with understanding how mechanics are working and what triggers them in most cases. So the trigger for this mechanic that basically makes this mechanic a mechanic is the fact that a land becomes something. So not necessarily a land becomes, just one permanent becomes a different type of permanent with a different characteristics. So quite interesting thing. So target assembly worker, create creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's quite interesting thing. So it's basically kind of a temporary buff, but this buff only targets assembly worker creatures, and that's it. No, I don't believe that we need to set this one. Okay, we already covered bending, so at the beginning of your upkeep, covered, this machine gets deals 3 damage to you unless you discard a card. So again, it deals you harm. It basically makes you lose something unless you discard a card, unless you pay a certain price not to do this. We already covered this. And if this one deals damage to you this way, tap it. Okay, again, this is just a balance for it, like just an additional restriction. So if you decide to allow this thing to deal damage, it's going to be tapped in order not to allow for this creature to attack. So it's all about the balance. If you will create a certain mechanic, and if this mechanic could be exploited in some way, because again, you could exploit this card if you have a deck with a lot of life gain. It's not going to matter for you if this card is going to deal you 3 damage. Like I don't want to lose 3 card. I don't want to lose like potential card advantage. I better lose 3 lives. And because of this, there is a information right here that basically makes this a little bit more balanced. That's not going to allow you to exploit this card's ability or mechanic. Which basically, if this creature deals damage to you this way, you have to tap it. So that means that you're not going to be able to attack with it. So the only way for you to attack with this creature is to discard a card. So you're losing card advantage, but again, it allows for this creature to attack. It's actually quite weak creature. The only cool thing about this creature is that it has bending. Besides it costs 7 and it's 5/5, and it basically gives you a lot of headache at the beginning of your upkeep. So because of the bending, it basically makes it quite fine. I mean, it's not that bad of a card. Still, it's quite interesting. So again, when creating your own cards, you have to think about the fact that in most cases, there is not that many abilities that Magic has. Like, if you're going to just, like, there's not that many actions that could be performed inside of the game. It's not that many abilities that you could come up with in their I don't know, sheer clear state. So for instance, if you have to add a certain resource, you will add this certain resource. That's it. This ability could go only so far. But in order to make this ability a little bit more unique, a little bit more interesting, now then you will set certain limitations for it. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells. So again, usually this is just something that adds 3 mana of resources, which is awesome. But in order to balance this out, you allowed to spend this mana only to cast artifact spells, which is again something that makes this ability a little bit more unique and a little bit more interesting. And you will think twice or even more before you will add this card into your deck. So again, this is the example why Magic basically forces you to think hard about certain decisions, and evaluate cards in a proper way, and actually think, do this card has the best value, or do this card has the best kind of explosiveness that I need in my deck, or etc. So depending on your goals for your deck, you have to ask these questions. And so again, Magic is not a game for lazy people who don't want to think. Because again, I don't believe that there are stupid people. I mean, they're just lazy people that don't want to think. And if you don't want to think, just basically, and for you it's much easier to behave as a stupid person, although you're not stupid. This is your choice. But again, in most cases, I don't believe, if a stupidity is a medical, has medical explanation behind it, then it's probably true stupidity. I mean, that's it, because of the certain limitations of your mind and etc. But in general, I don't believe that people are just stupid. They're just either too limited in their awareness or don't want to think. And there is a way for them to become better at what they do, or they're just too restricted within a certain area and not that, I don't know. So we all, I guess that's what I'm saying, that we all smart about at least something that we're interested in. I mean, we're not going to be overall smart. Again, there is a lot of kind of terminologies like street smart, I don't know, like school smart or life smart or relationship smart or whatever. So because of this, you're always going to have a certain areas in your life that will make you feel good about your intellect. So because of this, I don't believe in necessarily in measure of the intellect, because it's basically based on a weird questions that supposed that you have to know certain type of information that ideally, if you brought up in a different kind of setting, you're not going to know this information, and in the end this test is going to make you look stupid. So again, it's weird. Anyway, so we don't have that much time, so let's just come up closer to the end. So I'm not necessarily covering this ability. So again, we have this just regular ability that's 3 mana, and you have to spend this mana to cast artifact spells. So again, quite interesting kind of ability. I don't believe that we actually have this one. Spend this mana. Let's just try to find it, because part of me thinks that we already covered it, but part of me not. So spend, no, this is suspend. So we actually don't have this mechanic. Interesting. So let's just tap this one, because it's actually quite interesting. Although it's clear and it's simple, but I don't believe that I have it. So what this mechanic is going to do, it's actually quite a common mechanic in Magic. Because of this, we're actually setting it to all-around mechanics and abilities in a category of frequently used abilities, without a name, because you don't have a name for it. So you basically add a basically mana. So you will top this one, you will add mana, then you will spend this mana only to cast a certain type of spells. So it basically creates a pretty interesting restriction in casting. So again, add like a lot of mana. Let's just say this. I mean, why a lot of mana? Because usually one permanent able to produce one type of resource. There are lands that could created two types of resources at the same time, but there is a price for it. So, and the same goes right here. So there is you have to pay a additional price to add more resources into your reservoir or mana pool. So, and this limitation is basically spend this mana only to cast a certain type of spells. So the only thing that we'll add as a specification is, if you will, produce more than usual. Again, I'm trying to keep it in general terms. I'm not even talking about mana. I'm talking about like general thing. If you will produce more than usual, if you will produce more, no, let's just set resources. Resources. If you will produce more resources than usual, you have to either pay a price for it, other price for it, not just a price, other price for it, or set a limit, or not a limit but restriction how this resource can be used. Yep. So this is actually quite cool. I mean, I like where this is going. So add a lot of mana, spend this mana only to cast certain type of spells. So again, this is the example of restriction. And another example is, for instance, sacrifice a creature for each additional mana that you have to pay, or tap an artifact for each additional mana that you have to pay, or tap a creature, or discard a card, or etc. So again, you have to pay an other price for it, or set a restriction how this resource can be used. Quite clear, quite easy, and nothing super complex. So we have a couple of minutes till the end, so let's just find our last card and go quickly through a couple of cards. We actually went super slow today, but we talked about a lot of cool stuff, so I'm actually quite happy about this session, although it's not that I don't know, effective, I would say, in terms of this card study. So pay 6, tap, return target permanent you both own and control to your hand. What the heck is this? Okay, this is too interesting to talk about now. I want to speculate about this card. This actually has a lot of ideas in it, so let's just set this one as a last card that we're going to, or the next card that we're going to work with. So the next card that we're going to work with, and it's going to be next session, which is probably going to be in a month or so, it's Obelisk of Undoing. So it's quite interesting card. I mean, I already it's like the fact that this card forces to target permanent, return target permanent you both own and control to your hand. Like, I don't even know how exactly this can be done. I mean, how you both can own and control a one target permanent. So either return 2 target permanents. Okay, return any of your permanents in play to your hand. Enchantment on that permanent are discarded. Can be used only on permanents you cast. So I mean, the old description for this card, it's quite like the printed description. quite confusing. Return any of your permanents in play to your hand. But why both? It's weird. Enchantment on that permanent are discarded. So about the discarding and enchantments, this is always the case. If you will return a creature to your hand, then this enchantment, like the phrase both, you both own and control to your hand. Like return 2 permanents? Maybe? Range серый перманент, которым вы владеете и контролируете в свою руку. Свой перманент, которым вы владеете. Oh, wait a minute. You both own and control. Okay, this is all about phrasing. You both own and control. Okay, now it's understandable. Either way, we're going to talk about this one next time, because this is the time to end the session. So the last thing that I'm going to say is, again, I definitely like where this is going in terms of the study. Again, I could freely study Magic in the way that I want to study it. I don't want to do this outside of the streams. I mean, the fact that I'm doing this during the streams, this is the only way for me to do this. I'm probably not going to have that much of a motivation if I'm not going to do this during the stream. So because of this, I'd rather going to create this as a stream. Even though there's no one is going to probably watch it, but again, it's kind of a time capsule. I already talked about the concept of creating a time capsule for yourself in order to look back at your life and see what you did a lot of years ago and reflect on it. Because again, it's so easy to lose yourself in life. I mean, you could have a good sense of good understanding what you want to do with your life, but then certain things will occur in your life that will force you to change direction quite a bit, and then change direction more and more and more and more. And the more you will change direction, the more you will start to forget that something that was a goal for you at the beginning. And you might look at this that you've grown from it, but in reality you're probably not, and you still have this urge to get back and start over again and actually do the things that you wanted to do in your life, that you set out to do a lot of years ago. And without having this time capsule, you're not going to be able to reflect on it. So because of this, in order to control my states of mind, control my direction, control where I'm going, I'm basically doing this. If I'm going to stop, if I'm gonna stop doing this, that's it for me. I mean, I'm probably going to lose myself in something. I will completely forget about this, and the more I will drive from this in a different direction, the less possibility that I'm going to be able to actually get to a point of creating my own tabletop games. So in order to have this goal in my mind, not maybe is in focus, but still kind of in a periphery, but still have this possibility, okay, this is something that I could do, and support the journey towards this goal, the more chances that I will actually get there. And even if I'm not, as I said before, it's still a journey worth having or worth going through, because it will teach me a lot. It will give me everything that I need at that time that I'm going to go through this journey, and it's going to make me a one bit happier than I would be without it. So again, it's all about balancing things and making sure that everything that you will create, you have to kind of log. It's a weird thing, because life, it's pretty as I said before, it's pretty easy to lose yourself in life, and you have to log your life in order to get back to the previous logs and see, okay, it's interesting, 5 years ago I wanted to do this, and then you try to get back and remember your state of mind at that point, and maybe this is actually something that could change your life for the better now. Something that you wanted to do years ago and you forget about it. So again, it's all about like a weird and an interesting life. I mean, life is quite unique in that way for every person, and I believe those who aware um, about themselves, about what they're doing and where they're going, are destined to succeed. At least it's in something that they want to do. And those who are unaware about themselves, those who are basically driving randomly in life, probably going to forget and forget and forget, and they will constantly change directions. And for someone, this is a good thing. I mean, it doesn't matter that you're not going to succeed. You might succeed this way too, but this is not necessarily going to be in a controlled way. This is not necessarily going to be necessarily your decisions. I don't know. This is weird. So yeah, I basically got confused. So let's just stop on this note. Or not confused, distracted. I got distracted about talking about life. I love to talk about like life stuff. This is something that I wanna create separately. Again, my main channel, Alex Connects, actually in the future is going to have a lot of life-oriented content about self-development, about learning how to live the best life that you possibly can, and etc. So it sounds super cheesy, but again, this is kind of one of the things that I am setting out to do. One of the main goals kind of that I have besides art. So yeah. So either way, on this note, we're going to end the session. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Have a nice day or night, and we'll see you in the next session when we're going to continue to work with Obelisk of Undoing. So, bye.